All right, I am happy to be joined by Josh Walda, contributor for Reviewing the Brew, part of the Fan-Sided Network. Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. I'm always excited to talk Brewers. We kind of talked about this before we started recording. I mean, I have the Dodger game on my TV on mute, and kind of wishing we were watching the Brewers playing. But that's kind of the way it goes sometimes, I guess.
If you would have told me that at this time the White Sox would be eliminated, the Brewers would be eliminated, the Rays would be eliminated, and the Giants would be eliminated, and the last remaining teams would be including the Braves and the Red Sox, I never would have believed you, but here we are, the DS and CS, and we're looking at some teams that we didn't expect to be here. But credit to those teams; they did what they had to do. Um, I guess as Brewer fans, we can just look and reminisce against, I guess, about the season that could have been, should have been, and I guess we'll never know. And look toward the next season, which is something we didn't expect to be doing this early into the postseason. I thought a good solid run was in the plans for this team. It didn't quite work out that well or that way. Give me your initial thoughts after watching that Brewers and Brave series.
I mean, I think ultimately it was disappointing. I think Stearns put it best in his postseason press conference when he said it was a disappointing end to a successful season.
Yeah.
95 wins, but the final 2 weeks of the regular season and postseason, the Brewers just kind of fell flat. And hand up, like I'll admit it, I was one of the people saying that we shouldn't be concerned about the Brewers' offensive struggles in the final 2 weeks of the season, but ultimately, it seems like I was wrong. It seems kind of
Hmm.
like the once the Brewers got the playoff spot clinched, like they kind of took their foot off the gas and struggled to get it back up, get it
Yeah.
back on offensively.
Yeah, and you hear about the switch, like flipping the switch in sports. As a Warrior fan, I know the Bucks are playing right now. They're playing pretty well, from what I was watching earlier. I remember the teams after we won that first championship, when I was still living in California, and then the next season, and the next season, and five straight NBA final appearances toward the maybe the third or fourth season of that run. The Warriors kind of coasted throughout the season, and they were able to coast because they had, obviously, KD, Curry, Clay Green, and all those guys. And then once the postseason hit, we always talked, or we would listen to, like, local radio, like, can they flip the switch? And then they would, and then we would see them play really great. They should have won four. They won 3 rings in 5 years. I was talking maybe a month or two ago to Jeff Blum, the Astros play-by-play color analyst for their TV station, and he had told me that he never believed in that until he saw the Astros last season and how they were barely making the postseason. They wouldn't have made the postseason had it not been for expanded playoffs, and yet they were still a game away from the World Series because once the lights went bright, they were able to turn it on. And this Brewers team just didn't have, I guess, maybe the pieces or the right people to be able to flip that switch. And I think that's what's most disappointing about this season. I mean, the pitching was good all series. Like, we held the Braves, and had we just scored a couple more runs, it would have been a whole different story. Woodruff looked good. Burns looked good. Peralta looked good for the short, couple innings that he had, and even Lauer impressed. And Hauser, he gave up obviously those home runs, but he also looked good. I mean, he didn't. He other than those, he pitched well. And then of course that Hader home run, and maybe that's just him not getting enough, you know, reps. I guess maybe because he hadn't really played pitch much in the series, but I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of on the same side as you. Like, I was hoping that they would be okay, kind of coasting sort of, but we were quite wrong, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think part of that may come from the experience. Like you pointed to the Warriors earlier, and the Brewers, don't really have that. Yeah, they've made it to the postseason four straight times, but it's been I mean, not really kind of a cohesive roster. I mean, there's been lots of fluidity in the makeup. I mean, it's off the top of my head, it's maybe 4 or 5 guys from the 2018 roster are still with the team. So I'm wondering
Mostly
if,
pitching staff too.
yeah, and I'm wondering if kind of that is part of the thing. I mean, when you have Yelich, Kane, Pena, Hader, Woodruff, and Burns, I guess that's 7 I just rattled off, but still, that's just over a quarter of the total roster. So I'm wondering if kind of that is one of the things too, kind of just the lack of experience that kind of went into it.
You make a good point. I mean, I know that this team, like you said, had been through 4 straight postseason appearances. Last year, kind of like, should they have been there? It's like, does that really count? I mean, it counts, but at the same time, had there been normal playoffs again, they probably wouldn't have made it last season. And this season, I've said this many times, is the first season where I expected them to go to the postseason, and I expected them to go far. 2018, we weren't sure what to expect. 2019, they had a really good team. Ultimately, it didn't. Maybe Yelich's injury had to do with it, but wild card game error, and then everything's over. And then last year wasn't really, it was a weird COVID year, so I kind of just throw that away, especially since we didn't advance. But you make a good point about the cohesiveness. If you look at these Astros teams, even the Giants, their core, Buster Posey, Crawford, Brandon Bell, all position players who have been in the postseason and have succeeded. Obviously, they've won 3 rings, 10, 12, and 14. This wasn't an even year, so I guess it's kind of, to be expected that they did not advance far. Maybe next year they will be a team to be reckoned with. But yeah, I mean, the Astros, their core has all been together. That may be a big part of it. I have a question for you, and this is a legitimate question. Maybe the Braves were not as bad as we thought. But if you were to stack our roster, pitching, not counting pitching, position players, how many in their roster, and we can draft from those 2 teams, how many Braves players would go first before you picked a Brewer player? Because they have a really good team.
Yeah.
Like, I was just looking at their infield, dude.
Oh yeah, I feel like
they hit crazy home runs.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at, man, Freeman's probably going 1-1, and then you're probably going to go Riley 1-2.
Yeah.
Albies
Swanson.
Also.
Yeah. Yep.
Swanson is probably the only guy in the infield where you could maybe make the case that Adames would be a preferable option to. But yeah, like I think part of it was kind of like, I mean, even the guys in the outfield for the Braves, obviously don't have Acuna, but they have Peterson, who's rocking the pearls and just rocking.
Yeah.
Man, he is. Jocktober is real.
It is, yeah.
Soler also, like, kind of, I feel like there was kind of a general idea that good pitching beats good hitting. And I think that is, I mean, me personally, I think that's kind of led me to almost feel a little overconfident going in. But you're making a good point. Like, looking at just the rosters, I mean, you're picking 6, 7 Braves before you're looking at getting past Adames on the Brewers roster.
And even when you get to the Brewers roster, how late would is Yelich going? Second round.